I'm Mr. Ramsey, saving Western civilization, one student at a time.
In this episode, we're going to discuss the von Schlieffen Plan, designed by General Alfred von Schlieffen of the German High Command, and his plan how Germany can win a two-front war with, or against, better yet, against France and Russia at the same time. So he had a plan to do that. But before we talk about that plan, we need to figure out who's on what countries on what side in this conflict of World War I. Okay, so the two sides are the Central Powers and the Allied Powers, or the Allies. So the Central Powers are consisted of four countries. They are Germany, Austria-Hungary, Bulgaria, and the Ottoman Empire. And everyone's familiar that there's an alliance system between Germany and Austria-Hungary, but some people might be surprised that Bulgaria and the Ottoman Empire also side with them. And we don't have to go into too many details, but there's a reason why Bulgaria and Ottoman Empire side with Austria and Germany, and that's because of the whole Baltic region and how their diplomacy efforts, especially German diplomacy efforts, helped those two countries, and so they looked for guidance for both Germany and Austria. So the four Central Powers in this war were Germany, Austria-Hungary, Bulgaria, and the Ottoman Empire. And then you have the Allies, who they're fighting, and that, of course, is Serbia, Russia, France, Belgium, and the British. So those are the five major ones when the war starts, okay? And eventually what's going to happen is you're going to have all of Europe fighting these sides except five. So all the countries of Europe, besides five countries, are going to take part in this war. And those five countries that are going to be neutral are Spain, Switzerland, Denmark, Norway, and Sweden. All the rest are going to be either an allied power or a central power. And the way to remember that is there's four central powers: Germany, Austria-Hungary, Bulgaria, and Ottoman Empire. And then there are five neutral powers: Spain, Switzerland, Denmark, Norway, and Sweden. All the rest are allied powers in Europe. So those are the two sides, the Allies versus Central Power. And of course, you know that that the United States is going to enter the war in 1917, and then Japan is going to enter much earlier than that, and then Italy, of course, is going to enter in 1915. If you remember, they were part of the Triple Alliance with Germany, Austria, but Italy decides to back away because they see that Austria's been the quote-unquote aggressor, and so they're not going to side with them. All right? And then eventually they're persuaded by the Allies, especially the British and the French, to help join the Allied powers to defeat Austria-Hungary and Germany. And the reason why the French and the British try to persuade the Italians to get involved is because they're trying to break the stalemate of this war, which we'll talk about as well in this lecture. So the first thing we need to talk about is the von Schlieffen Plan. And the von Schlieffen Plan is this: how do you win a two-front war? Okay, and so Germany's trying to figure out how they do this, and they come up with this idea by Alfred von Schlieffen. Okay, and he figured out, it's not accurate, but he figured out that it will take 6 weeks for Russia to mobilize. And so they have to knock out France in 6 weeks so that they can fight Russia. So that's the plan. So knock out France first, and then take all your troops that you defeat France with, and then fight the Russians. And then that's how you win the war. In order to do that, though, you have to invade a neutral country, Belgium, because all the French are going to be on the border between France and Germany, and if you sweep around them, then you can defeat them. And that's the plan, the von Schlieffen plan. All right, invade neutral Belgium, sweep around them, capture Paris, lock up the French, boom, defeat the French in a 6-week time period, and then race across Germany and then defeat the Russians. That's what Alfred von Schlieffen planned. I would say it's not a moral plan. It's very Machiavellian, but that was his plan. And you'll notice that several powers are going to do anything it takes to win the war. And we'll talk about that as well. Okay? So that's his plan. Okay? And it runs into problems from the get-go. Okay? So the person, by the way, General Alfred von Schlieffen dies in 1905. But the German High Command are going to follow his plans. And the man that you need to know is Hermann Moltke the Younger. Not his uncle, okay, who fought in the Franco-Prussian War. I'm talking about Moltke the Younger, who implements the plan. And the first problem that Moltke the Younger enters, or problem, is when they start invading Belgium. Actually, Belgium's more fortified than they thought. And so it's slow going for them once they cross into the Belgium frontier, okay? And then the second problem that he runs into is that Russia partly mobilizes faster or quicker than he thought, okay? And then the third problem he runs into is the fact that the British actually get to France a little quicker than he thought. By invading Belgium, the British enter this war, okay? So those are 3 major problems that he has to face. But Moltke the Younger almost does it. He almost captures Paris, okay? So just to remind you of the problems, Belgium was more fortified, Russia mobilizes a little quicker, and the British Expeditionary Force gets there a lot faster than he thought, okay? So what happens is, as he crosses into Belgium, this is the Germans under Moltke the Younger. Once he crosses into Germans, he meets the French, and they make a mistake, and that mistake is called the Battle of the Marne. Okay, what happens is, in the plan of Alfred von Schlieffen, they're supposed to sweep around Paris. They're supposed to go around it, okay? And what happens is actually his forces actually cut in too soon. They're not around Paris. They're actually cut in front of Paris, okay? Which leaves a gap where the British Expeditionary Force exploits. And that leads to the Battle of the Marne between the Allies, or really there's the French and the British, and the Germans, okay? And technically it was a draw, but because that battle is fought, it stops the German war machine. And once that German war machine stopped, it's hard to put it back into motion, okay? Because they withdraw from the battle, they retreat, I think, about 50 miles from the battle, and then they try to restart it. But once they try to restart it, it's too late, okay? There's a race towards the sea. In other words, what happens is you have 2 lines between the Allies and the German forces, and they can't go around the French and the British forces. The Germans can't. And so they can't sweep around them anymore. And so they run into the Atlantic Ocean or the English Channel. And so there is now a line from Switzerland all the way to the Atlantic Ocean, okay? And so now it's a stalemate in the Western Front. And that stalemate is going to be there for 4 years. And that's going to develop a lot of problems. And that's basically what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about the major battles in those 4 years in our next lecture. So that race, the Battle of the Marne, is where it stops the German war machine, and we're going to start there in our next segment. Hope you enjoy. Thank you.
On the run, on the run, on the run. Hear them calling you and me.